Welcome to the S3D Sidekick podcast series for biomechanics and sports performance. Join us as we dive in and discuss the latest cutting-edge technology and research as we will connect with industry experts and sports scientists. Follow and subscribe.
All right. Hey, welcome to today's podcast. I'm Will Lehmann with S3D, and we're joined today by Nick Parkinson. He's the Supervisor Athletic Training and Sports Performance at Henry Ford Health down in Detroit. So he's joining us today. We're going to talk about gait analysis and how motion capture is used and tools, other tools that are used in analyzing gait, why gait is analyzed, how the information is then taken and used to help athletes either improve their performance or kind of reduce the risk of injury. So I guess we'll start off. If Nick, you just want to tell us a little bit about your role at Henry Ford, like how gait analysis fits into the broader scope of sports performance, and then your rehab setting there.
So thanks for having me on, Will. I'm Nick. Working down here at Henry Ford Health, building the program around what we do in the labs, working with sports rehab, working with sports performance, and bringing everything together in one place. My role here, kind of do a little bit of everything, like any kind of athletic trader out there. Oversee some of our outreach schools, so high schools, colleges, oversee our performance program, and then work closely with our director of sports rehab, Dave Tomsich, to build this program. And what we're doing down here is trying to bring almost that professional level of equipment to the general public, while also keeping that high level of service that we do for the professional teams in Detroit.
What technology do you have in the lab, not specific to gait, but what kind of tools or what makes your lab there or your facility unique?
We always tell people that we feel spoiled working for a major health system. I feel like you don't necessarily get the equipment that we have here all in one place. In the gym itself, we have things that we can utilize, such as Ultra G treadmill for those coming back from injury or just rehabbing and wanting to keep up on their fitness. We have a 1080 sprint along with a full, I think it's about 70-yard track that's indoors. The 1080 quantum, so we have two towers there, so we can do the Smith rack, but then also go off into the individual arms itself. Moving to kind of the lab space, we have the semi-motion capture, gait markerless cameras in the Gait lab, along with the HP Cosmos Zebras treadmill. That's the instrumented treadmill, so it's nice to be able to combine that with the cameras and get a full picture of somebody's gait. And then we have a upstairs lab, which is 2 stories with the same kind of camera setup, but then it also adds in 4 Bertec force plates that are embedded in the ground, along with HP Cosmos Speed Zone, which allows us to kind of look at somebody's reaction time and agility training.
Oh, that's pretty cool. A lot of technology you have. So what's your background as far as running? Are you a runner? Did you ever get your gait analyzed using motion capture before you started this job or while you were an athlete or anything like that?
Oh yeah, so my background, I'm a runner. I run trail ultra marathons.
Whoa.
Oh yeah.
Impressive.
Thanks. It's funny you ask about getting my gait analyzed. I actually just had surgery this past winter on my hip. Old injury from high school from sports, but I'm experimenting on myself with analyzing my gait post-op. And I'm interested to see what the process is from the patient perspective. So I can kind of look at how we do things a little bit. But yeah, my interest came from being injured. So having my gait analyzed way back in the day when I started at Henry Ford with Dave, it was much simpler then. It was movement exam, iPad of running, and some strength testing out in the rehab facility. But then that was very informative. I just didn't quite get the detail that we can now.
Nice. The technology has definitely improved, especially in the past 10 to 15 years. But the gait has always been one of the traditional movements that people have always analyzed. I think counter movement, jump has really blown up in the past 15 years, but I think gait has been around. Analyzing gait has been around a lot longer than that, whether it be a performance or even a clinical setting. I always go back to thinking the initial, running barefoot or running on your forefoot compared to heel striking. And that's been one of the staples that in the early days of biomechanics that people really focused on and trying to figure out what was more efficient for these either marathon runners or Olympians. I know there was some Olympians like the 80s, they would run barefoot just to have that midfoot or forefoot strike instead of that heel strike. But yeah, the technology has come a long way, and running shoes have evolved, and analyzing gait has all played into that.
Oh yeah. You look back at the whole, even I read Born to Run, and then there's a whole craze a few years back. Everybody's got to go barefoot. Some good research out of the Harvard labs as far as transitioning to the barefoot. And now I was just talking with our sports PTs, and I feel like we're seeing that transition now back to that maximalist. And so you're getting more of those cushion shoes. Like, the technology is better, obviously, with the different types of foam, the energy return you can get from it. But now you're seeing like these big stack heights of running shoes. And it's funny to watch the roller coaster of, now we're coming up into maximalist. Now, when are we going to go back down to like that barefoot running minimalist, which I think both have a place, and depending on the runner, but it's interesting to watch the industry change almost constantly, going back and forth between two extremes.
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to it. There's a good fit for different athletes. And maybe if you're a more experienced runner, you need that minimalist shoe, or if you're doing long distance, you need that maximal cushion shoe. Or maybe if you're a new runner, you feel more comfortable with the maximal shoe. But I think that's what interesting I want to talk to you is analyzing someone's gait could really help maybe even determine what kind of shoe they want. So one of the reasons we're doing this, the Boston Marathon's coming up. So we want to talk to you. And I think you guys have some athletes that come in to your facility that are just amateur runners, but they're passionate about it. So what is it like for someone if they wanted to get their gait analyzed at your facility, or what kind of process, what does that look like from start to finish?
We try to make it, like I said at the beginning, pretty accessible. I think sometimes people don't realize we're here, or that if they do, it's only for your professional athletes or your high level marathoners. But we're starting to get quite a few now of the recreational runners who just want the longevity of running, and then to improve, to get that BQ time, to reach their goals. And they found they have injuries. They found they have some issues that go on during training. And so they come to us. Typically, they give us a call. We go over the options. We have a couple different packages with our labs. One being just to go through, do some of the evaluation using motion capture, the treadmill, and that's kind of it. The one we do recommend is to add on a movement exam with that. So the data's good, right? But when you give somebody all these numbers and sheets and pictures, and you go, okay, go use this, good luck. You're not really doing it justice, in our opinion, without having that, what we call almost like the why, or the qualitative measurement of being hands-on with an athlete and a runner. So the one, we call it the gold package, of course. You have them come in. We do about an hour-long movement exam. We get you on the table. We are looking at hip range of motion, dorsiflexion, how stiff is the big toe, getting those little things out of the way first before we have them warm up, get into the gym, do some strength testing, endurance testing, just single leg, pistol squats, then bring them into the lab. We'll talk to them about, number one, I found people, I have to ask if they've been on a treadmill. I feel like I've had a rash of like teenagers and young kids who have never been on a treadmill before. Being in Michigan, I have a lot of questions for them.
Yeah.
But we go through that. We familiarize them with the treadmill. Our treadmill, there's no front to it, obviously, so the camera can see. And so it's kind of scare some people. So I have them get used to it. We walk through. If they have a pace that they know they run at, we move up towards that pace and see if that's comfortable for them. If they don't really know, it's more, we play around with the pace for 5-10 minutes to get something dialed in that is appropriate for them. Most of the time I tell them I don't want like a super tempo run, but I don't want Sunday long run, just something that's nice and steady. Obviously that changes a little bit when you get into a team sport situation, or we've had a couple sprinters on there. We're going to want them to get more into that sprinting. But for the general public, that medium is where we want them. Go through, we collect both the cameras with the Markerless motion capture and then the Zebras treadmill, kind of combine them, and then we'll review with them the Zebras treadmill, because that kind of spits out a report immediately. And we do some explanation with them. Here's some asymmetries that we're finding. But we always assure them that it's the three parts that we want to take as a whole, not just because you're not getting to your right big toe versus your left on the treadmill. We don't know what's influencing that without looking now at the video and then combining it at the movement exam. So
Okay.
we kind of review it, but then we want to make sure that they understand that there's more to it than just a pressure heat mat.
Yeah.
And so then we encourage them to take a look at the report. We always warn them it's sometimes in clinical language, more for our benefit if they do come back in or they work with us in rehab. But then we always try to set up an appointment, whether it's in person, remote like this, over the phone, where we want to review it with them. And so we've had a few sprinters now that we've reviewed it with them, their coaches. And so we make sure they understand kind of what we're seeing and how it can influence their training. And so we do that same thing with some of our recreational runners as well.
Nice. Can you touch on like the key metrics or key data points that you guys look at? Maybe talk about like why those are important, why you look at those. And then if there's any like common discoveries when you're doing a gait analysis or looking at these KPIs that you discover or that surprise either a lot of athletes or patients that you have come in.
Yeah. So it's definitely a very individual thing when we're looking at it. Obviously, you got to take into account, are you looking at somebody coming back from patellar tendonitis? Did they have a stress fracture in their foot? So those KPIs can change a little bit. But some of the keys that we look at is going to be cadence. We're wondering if your cadence is too slow, we're going to try to ramp it up a little bit, play around with it. Obviously, if it's not efficient cadence for you, that's going to be an issue, especially with overuse injuries. With the treadmill, one big one we look at is the force curve. So we make sure to review that. We look for any kind of jolts at the beginning. So obviously you're going to have that nice parabola as you go through. If you get that initial jolt and then come up, are you hitting too hard? Is that side hitting harder than the other side? What does that look like? And then that's where it comes in with looking at a movement exam and then getting into some of the data that the motion capture is giving us. On the motion capture side, we like to look at things like foot rotation as you're moving through. Are you a little bit too rotated out? Are you over that 7 degrees that we want to see when you're running? Things like shin angle at initial contact, excursion as you're moving into that absorption phase. And then as you're moving through into that push off, is your triple extension equal side to side? Are you faster at the left hip, slower on the right hip? How is it relating to each? And then how does it look down the chain when you're looking at knee and ankle as well? That's one big thing I look at, especially with athletes, is do you have that power to drive off of the leg? And then if it's something where we prescribe a plyometrics to address that so they can get some of that power back and hopefully, again, feeds into that cadence, feeds into that absorption and that power expression that they have.
After you give a gait analysis and you look at the power, shock absorption, do you then give a protocol on like a strength training protocol or something that they can do to help either improve those metrics or KPIs and get their gait a little bit more balanced?
Yeah, it'll depend on the client. If it's something where they're traveling from, let's say up by Saginaw or Flint, somewhere that's a little far away, we'll have them come in for the day. We'll do the testing, send them the report, and that'll have probably typically at least a half page of exercises and recommendations, if not more, depending on the athlete. That'll include corrective exercises. If you do find like a power deficit, we'll add in some basic plyos and then the progressions that they can follow off of that. But a lot of corrective exercises is usually kind of where we harp on, because most of the people that we have will do some sort of strength training, but we also want to balance that they're going to actually do the exercises we give them. So it's almost like I find maybe 10 exercises or less is usually the sweet spot, like something you can get done in 15 to 20 minutes before a run. It's easy. On the other side of things, if we're still going to give them correctives, but we'll also get, our rehab patients. So sports rehab, we'll send somebody in, we'll get a little extra data on them and then go back out and work with their therapist. We can give them some recommendations, but it's nice to have those eyes and hands on them because now we don't worry as much about the progressions and that they're doing it right. So they have that guidance. And that's coming from anybody, whether it's our own sports rehab PT down here, if they're seeing another entity in the area, we want to make sure that we're collaborating still. We don't have secrets.
Yeah.
We're going to give the report out. We're going to give our recommendations. And our focus is we want to make that runner or athlete better. It's not, obviously, yes, there is competition, but the most important thing is the athlete and the patient getting better and reaching their goals.
Yeah. What is there something like a common athlete or common runner? I feel like our lifestyles these days are very sedimentary. So like I'm from my example of myself, either I'm sitting in a car, an airplane, or at my desk. I do a lot of sitting. If I came and get my gait analyzed, and I told you I sat a lot, is there something that you're expecting me to do differently than if I was a trained runner and that I would need to work on? Like what's a common injury or issue with people that have with gait that maybe they don't realize if they didn't get their gait analyzed?
I think if you're just getting up out of a chair, going to run, obviously practice is good. Your cadence might not be the most efficient thing because you don't necessarily run.
When you say cadence, like what do you mean exactly by that?
So just steps per minute. So how many steps you're taking per minute? Sometimes it's a matter of, are you overstriding, getting a lower cadence versus are you actually hitting midfoot, forefoot, pawing back and efficiently moving through? So sometimes that inefficiency can be an issue, especially for a newer runner. Not necessarily something I would tinker with right away, but it would definitely be, okay, we're going to work on that pop and actually cycling through versus just slowly plodding along almost. If you're sitting, we all drive, we're all traveling, we're all sitting at the desk and the computer, we're all hunched over. I think the biggest thing would be probably some mobility issues is going to definitely come up. You're going to have stiff thoracic spine. So are you able actually, it's a smaller component, but it's always interesting to me to look at somebody's run and then they get that twist here, but then it's stiff to one side. So it definitely can be stiff through the upper extremity, which can guide some things as you move down the chain. Hip flexors, you're sitting in that shortened position all day. So now you go from this nice elongated muscle to more this shortened muscle can be an issue, definitely, especially when you're trying to move into that extension. And that's where you're going to lose the power, the motion. And so you're not going to be able to efficiently move through that gait cycle. Yeah, I think those are a few of the bigger ones. Mobility in the ankle, mobility in the hip, up into the thoracic spine. You think about like your back pain with the hip flexors. And so it's all intertwined. And then when we look at it, it's like, where do we start pulling the string on the ball to unravel what's going on?
Yeah, that's understandable. Is there issues with people like striding the too long or maybe their cadence is too long where it's like they're reaching with that lead foot and then it's as they're landing and that impact is then affecting like almost being their shock absorption is all in their hip. Is that a common problem?
Oh yeah. Like when you're reaching it, like imagine you're coming down onto your heel. And so now you're here and typically you're going to have that straighter shin. And so now all that force is just going to go like straight up into your hip. And so you're going to beat up the hip, you're going to beat up the knee. And so that's where we look at getting to that more efficient absorb, actually go into the movement and then transfer that power back into the jump.
Yeah. What are either some of the challenges you've seen throughout your time analyzing people's gaits? What are the challenges either from the technical side or just a general challenge that you've seen when trying to analyze somebody's gait? And then have you seen any advancements within the technology or within the science of understanding someone's gait in the past few years, or what does the future outlook look like as well?
Yeah, I think some of the, when we first started the issues with us, I think we're clinicians, number one. I moved from high school athletic training into the sports performance realm. I'd always done some biomechanic work and then finally moved into the labs fully. My team was athletic trainers, sports PTs, none of the biomechanical engineers that you might see in a lab. You think about most of the motion capture lab at colleges, it's always in the basement of the arena. There's always 2 or 3 people working at the force plate. I don't think we didn't have that individual. And so I think when we started, there was that learning curve of we have the knowledge, we know the human body, we know physiology, biomechanics. It's now, how are we going to use the technology side of things to augment what we do? We're good with the movement exam, but how can we make that better? And so that's where we went with our current lab setup with the Gait lab and the performance lab, integrating the cameras. When we were started, had our options. So, I mean, we did markerless motion capture. obviously had the option to use marker. We had the
Mhm.
2D motion capture as well. Through some trial and error, we found markerless was best for us. I know there's always a debate. Is it accurate? Is it, marker? I get it. On our end, we're clinicians and we're applying it in the clinical space. I would say if we were doing more of that robust research, getting out there into journals and pumping out some papers, then yeah, I would play around with the markers more to have more of that minutia data dug down deep into it. But I think with us applying it in the clinical space, we get what we need from the markerless and then combining it with the force plates, both in the treadmill and in the ground, we can get that full picture that we're looking at.
Nice.
It was just playing with how we combine it and how much information we give the clients and patients.
It's always a delicate dance of not overloading them, but also getting
It
them
was.
to get the right information that it's going to help them.
No, we looked at, so obviously we have our new report now, which is great. It's very succinct. We're able to make notes and it pulls out what we need. But we were looking at an old report, and I think the file had 7 to 10 pages of just all this data, all this information. And I just looked back at it and I'm like, why did we give this to people? They didn't care.
Yeah.
It's not that they didn't care. It's just,
It's like when I get my blood work back and I look at it, what does this mean?
What is it compared to the other side? What does this mean in the grand scheme of things? And so that's
Yeah.
where we we got to streamline this. We got to take our clinical language. We can keep a little bit of it, but it's like in the report itself, we have to make sure that it's succinct and people know what they need. So like we can explain it to her blue in the face, but if we don't have these 6 exercises for your issue, what are we really doing?
Yeah, then to go back to the point of the marker or markerless, I think that's the next move in gait analysis and biomechanics is a lot of things are moving markerless. I think with the help of AI technology and camera vision, it has really definitely improved the quote unquote accuracy. Obviously, markers are always going to be like gold standard, but I think what people don't realize is that just because you get a markered system doesn't mean you're going to get accurate data. You really need to know where to put the markers on the athlete in order to get good data. Because if you don't put your markers in a similar spot or same spot every time, or in the right spot, then your data might not be good.
Right, and then you're going to have the skin artifact from if you place on the wrong spot. Now it's moving around as you're doing something. Now this data is crap versus somebody else's stuff, and so it's a delicate dance. And to your point, the addition we found of AI is definitely helping. It's definitely streamlined our process to be able to have these models that actually pretty accurately, when I review it, know where these landmarks are, able to pull that data and then put it into report in a quarter of the time of what we used to do manually, finding each joint, marking each joint, running it one frame, marking each joint, running it one. Like it's come a long way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Even in the 5 years we've been doing this, it's come a long way.
No, for sure. Yeah, some people just think that it's comparing marker to markerless is apples to apples, and really it's like apples to oranges.
Right.
And it's a lot more efficient. You don't have to have someone come in and then spend the time marker them up. You can just say, hey, start warming up on the treadmill and then start recording them. So it's a lot more efficient for the clinicians as well. Have you seen any light bulb moments with patients or athletes where the data really changed the way they moved or helped improve their performance, where maybe they were hitting a roadblock or couldn't perform or get better, and then they came and saw you guys and they were able to really improve their performance or alleviate an injury?
Yeah, I think the biggest, being in our setting with injuries and return to sport, we do a lot of return to sport testing in the labs that include the gait evaluation. And it's interesting to have somebody come from rehab where they've been working, let's say like on an ACL for 6 months. They come in, they hit that plateau. Now they just can't quite get, let's say, the power back in their leg. They have the strength to do it. They have the mobility, but there's just like that one thing missing. And to put them in our labs, run them on the treadmill if they're a team sport, even hockey players we've had run. And even though it's not necessarily a component of their sport, it brings things out. And so we know now, like, we can get down and say, how about we tinker with this one thing right here and see what happens. And then to see them break through that plateau, let's say they just had, like I mentioned before, that propulsion was poor on the ankle. And so now let's add in a little bit more work into the gastroc. Let's work on that power, the plyometrics. And now all of a sudden things even out and they can make that breakthrough. It's always pretty rewarding. I think for anybody who's in this job, that's the rewarding factor for it, is getting somebody back to their sport, whether it be professional or recreational runner, to see somebody make that goal and to do what they want to do and help them get there is always great.
Yeah. And the more people that are doing what they want to do and are able to enjoy their sport overall, then that has a ripple effect on the overall health of our community, because more people are going to be active. They're not going to have this fear of getting injured from their sport or not being able to complete rehab.
No, yeah, I was just going to say, when I was working, the funny thing is I work with return to sport all the time and tell me they're good to go. We're good.
Yeah.
And then I get them out of the treadmill and we can just have them. I don't start the treadmill. I just put the force plates on the TVs right in front. And I go, okay, just stand there. Even doing like here's a kettlebell. We're just going to do 10 pounds. You stand there and we're going to do a squat. And to watch them squat down, and all of a sudden you can see the percentages of 60% to 40% on one side. And I'm like, okay, I don't think you're too good right now. And so then I could teach them that biofeedback with a lot of the technology we have, the motion capture, the instrument and treadmill. It's okay, now look up at the TV. You see how your knee isn't quite getting as far as this knee, or you're twisted over the side. Try to make these percentages 50-50 and now go down, make them 50-50. And now we can take that back out to the gym, and I can give them that cueing of, remember out there, do it here. And so that's another way that I've made a few breakthroughs with our clients.
Yeah, that's very cool. This is like something I wish I had when I was an athlete, and like going through, I get injured, I'm fine, I'm good now. And now when I look at my squat, I'm just totally shifting all the way to my right.
So bad.
Far right. Yeah, it's really bad. But
when you're a clinician, you just got to have one good rep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, we could wrap up, but is there any advice that you give like an athlete or a clinician that's looking to either incorporate a gait assessment, or they are looking to analyze gait at their facility?
I think for the athlete looking to get their gait analyzed, whether it be for injury or just improvement, definitely make sure the facility does gait analysis. I don't know a better way to put it, but just make sure that they have that experience. Because I feel like with as nice as like all the technology coming out, you can get a phone app right now.
Yeah,
go out and do it. But unless you're experienced at looking at it, you can almost lead somebody unintentionally, right, on a path that isn't necessarily going to help them. So I think it's making sure to do your homework, talk to the people. If you don't have a connection with them, then that could be a red flag as well, because are you really going to want to work with them down the road as you're working with that clinician? On the clinic side, I think there's going to be trial and error. If you're going to start down the gait evaluation path, whether it be the simple phone app or two portable force plates in the gym, or going the full motion capture route, there's always going to be those growing pains. But I think just don't get frustrated with it. Always kind of look at all options, make the decision that's best for your clinic space and that's going to make you efficient and more accurate. But there was definitely tough times when we started. I was like, why is this doing this right now? It was frustrating. It's just, I know I can see where that would put people off to it. They'd put the technology to the side and continue doing their original thing. Give it a chance. You can put it down for a day, but keep trying to integrate some of this accurate equipment into what you're doing, because it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice. One thing I was gonna say, when you say the athlete to make sure they do their homework, I think that goes back to, I think AI and our technology is getting better and making it easier to capture data, but then to actually apply it really comes in where that knowledge and background comes in. So you want to make sure if you're getting your gait analyzed, whoever's doing it or giving that feedback really has that background and knowledge.
Yeah, you don't want to just be going to somebody that's collecting data just to collect data and give it to you. You could almost do that yourself. You want to make sure it's being used and being used well.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate your time. If someone wants to, if they're in the Metro Detroit area and they want to schedule a visit to your facility and get their gait analyzed, where can they do that, or how do they do that? Just go online. What's that look like?
Yeah, I think the best thing get in touch with us is henryford.com/sports performance. All of our programs are there, descriptions, a little bit about our clinicians, and then obviously the number if you have questions.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Thanks. If you guys are still listening, appreciate you tuning in. I hope this is helpful and insightful. Anybody out there that's interested in Gait. And then, yeah, if you're in the Metro Detroit area or even the Great Lakes region, want to get your Gait analyzed, check out Henry Ford, and I'll put the link in the description and check it out there. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.